watched Nintendo, man, my thumbs were always sore. We stayed up past midnight, beating every score. Now I'm almost 21, playing evermore.
All right, well, welcome back, Beavenites and Docutrons. It is I, your savior, the Beaveman, and remotely in the great state of Michigan, where I am also located, where we are freezing our tail ends off, is the Doc. Say hello, Doc.
Hello, Doc. I'm supposed to just say hello.
Never-ending comedy with the Doc. To recap, we are talking about the donut that we call Earth, that we call home, the hollow Earth.
Makes me want just a real donut.
It does kind of make you want a donut, doesn't it?
But not one of those donuts, like a donut that's not, like, full of shit.
You say this donut, you're saying this particular donut is full of shit. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
You're saying that the science that I have provided you so far does not convince you that the Earth is indeed hollow?
Not in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. Here's the questions that we get from The Hollow Earth by Raymond Bernard, A.B., M.A., Ph.D. We're going to delve into a little bit more, but I'm just kind of recapping a little bit, and I'm going to ask Doc some questions here so we can get his take on them. These are questions that are posed by the author and or sources that he received from other sources. I believe that this author's last name was Fitch, and this is the person that he's quoting her in this book. If I may. If the Earth is not hollow, then why does the north wind in the Arctic get warmer as one sails north beyond 70 degrees latitude? Can you answer that, Doc? Can you answer that question?
Well, it's all thermal dynamics. Like I said before, it's all currents. I mean, these things can be plausibly explained by regular old science.
I think some of it also is that people naturally assume, which is foolish, that as you go north, it gets cold. To a certain extent, that would be, of course, true. However,
generally speaking, yes.
Generally speaking, but we do know that the South Pole is fucking cold. So if you go far enough south, you would reach the South Pole where it is cold.
Well, there are islands, Alaskan islands, who during certain types of the year, same temperature as Hawaii.
So it is, of course, all relative. Let me see.
Like I said before, that's because currents carry the warmer air from down south towards the north in that region.
What we can naturally assume is that there's not some giant being in the ocean that's peeing that makes it temporarily warm, much like the pool. You know, if you're around your friends and the pool's cold and all of a sudden it gets warm, you should be suspicious.
I would be.
Let's see. If no rivers are flowing from the inside to the outside, then why are all icebergs composed of fresh water?
Well, that's all the process of evaporation, condensation, and then you add some cold weather to that, and the condensation becomes snow. Snow becomes ice, and the ice builds up and floats on the salt water. So, yeah.
So it almost makes you wonder when they're looking at this because of course I said this book came out in 1969. The information that he's quoting or that he has researched to write this book is older than 1969. I mean, he's delving back to some much older publications also that he's read. So I feel like that they are under the belief system that because it's so cold in the North and South Pole, it's almost as if they don't believe that the water evaporates and condenses. You know what I mean? As if they think it's so cold that there is, much like when it's so cold, it feels like there's no moisture in the air because it's just so fucking cold. Kind of like now where it's, -10 degrees. If we go outside, the air does feel much drier than, of course, when it's humid in the summertime.
Well, just because, like, for example, just because a particular area is considered a desert now doesn't mean that it always was. So the actual level of precipitation or, moisture in the air may be low today, but it wasn't always. And that's how the ice built up and the glaciers got there. But right now we're going through kind of a drought in those areas. So technically, like Antarctica and parts of the North Pole in that area are considered a desert because their annual precipitation is less than, I forget whatever the marker is that determines whether or not it's a desert.
I also feel that for some reason they believe that, much like here, if it's, I don't know, what does the temp have to be? Actually, it has to reach above a certain point if we were just to put down regular rock salt here. If it's 10 degrees.
It's about 20 degrees.
Yeah, if it's 10 degrees here, does the rock salt really work? Well, not really so well, obviously, because it's not really going to melt that ice that we're experiencing. We do have, obviously, new chemicals that they'll put down or new substances that will melt the ice a little bit better, but I feel almost like they're looking at it and going, well, you can't possibly freeze salt. You can. You can. I mean, the thing is, I feel as if they believe that because the ocean is salt water, that it's not that's not what's freezing. Well, technically, no, I guess not. It's the evaporants or the fresh water out of it that's being freezed. It's not like it's desalinating itself to become an iceberg. And
Correct.
these icebergs are ancient. I mean, how old are these icebergs? It's not like they get reproduced every 5 seconds. Okay, here's another thought-compelling question. Why does one find tropical seeds, plants, and trees floating in the freshwater of these icebergs?
Well, again,
Drift.
you have currents.
Yeah, drifting current.
Between freshwater, saltwater, air currents, and they're all mixed as far as one affects the other. I can't remember, chicken or the egg conversation. Does the air current affect the water temperature, or does the water current affect the air temperature? I think that's more likely since water holds more energy than air. So more likely it's the other way around. The air temperature is affected by the ocean currents. So the ocean is pretty much key to everything. And you go far enough down, that water gets pretty cold. In some cases, in most cases, even below freezing. So you take that and water gets churned up for whatever reason. Some of that cold water down at the bottom comes up and it can create a cold front. Maybe a short one, but still a cold front.
Well, here's a really good question. Why? And I think I can answer this question. But why is there colored snow in the Arctic region?
Bacteria?
I think it is the presence of multiple polar bears. I mean, they didn't ask what color snow. I mean, if you're talking about yellow snow, I'm pretty sure I know.
No,
what the answer to that question is.
I've seen reds and browns.
Right, they have reds, browns. They say, of course, that's due to. Is it due to pollination? Is it due to dust? Apparently, if you're farther enough up in the Arctic Ocean, in certain parts of the Arctic Ocean, there is a huge amount of dust that flows in that area. And what does the dust come from? So if there's not land up there generating all that dust, what is it that's generating that dust? Well, I have no idea, but the fact that let's say, okay, let me humor them here. Let's say that there are openings at the North and South Pole. If there were openings at the North and South Pole, that still does not mean that we would be shaped like a donut and hollow all the way through the center. Could there be caverns up there? Of course. Why not? Could there be little pockets of oasis with warmth? Sure. Why not? We know that there's springs. There's natural warm springs, and you could have all your own little tropical oasis in a small area. But would it be?
I've read about caves that were as big as cities.
Sure. Why not? I mean, that's totally. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's unreasonable to believe that it goes all the way straight through, and there's a little sun in the middle. But hey, let's move on. So we've kind of recapped a little bit, I would say. Would you think perhaps on the let's just say on the belief of the hollow Earth? Basically, what we're saying is there are folks out there who believe that the Earth is shaped like a donut. It's got an opening at the top. It's got an opening at the bottom. The openings are very large. We're talking like 1,400 miles. And you could theoretically go from the North to South Pole in a straight shot. Of course, you'd have to navigate around the little sun that's in the middle if you happen to be one of those folks that believe there's a little sun in the middle, or you could be a hollow earther that does not believe there's a little sun in the middle. Either way, you could go from pole to pole in a relatively quick period of time. So not only do we believe that there's a hollow earth and the landscape is, I would say, if I was going to imagine it, I would say it's just the flip side of ours, right? Because on the hollow earth, they say that there's more land than there is water. So it's the opposite of us on the outside, us outer surface livers, where it's more water than land. So I guess it's the opposite. If you were to flip a mountain over here, on the other side, I guess it's a big indentation. I don't know. So imagine if you will, and I didn't describe this very well last time. So imagine if you will, there's a pretty good analogy that if I took an egg and I put a hole in the top of the egg and I put a hole in the bottom of the egg and I got the yolk out of the egg and the white of the egg out. Imagine if you would, that egg, the outer surface is the earth and the inner surface is all the area that's able to be lived upon on the inside of that egg. So you'd still have a lot of surface area to live. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, but their theory starts to break down by asking simple questions as, well, if the earth is hollow, how's the shell? They should be able to at least supernumerate to predict that.
Well, I did read in here one also kind of funny theory. Why they think that the Earth is why they think the Earth is hollow is because somebody found a geode and broke it open, and they're like, "Oh, the Earth is just a giant geode." It's got a little surprise in the middle. What, you don't think that that's accurate? You don't think the Earth's a giant geode? What if the Earth's just a giant egg? We've got a dragon in the middle.
If they compared it to a giant egg, that would make a lot more sense because in the sense of it being a geode with a liquid center. Okay, that's not too far off from what scientists subscribe to now.
But even a geode is more solid than not. I mean, the crystalline structures are inside. It's not like you have like all this space on the inside where you could run around and fly spaceships, et cetera, et cetera.
Definitely not a miniature sun in the center.
No, maybe more like a Cadbury. Where you look like a Cadbury cream egg. What if it was a giant egg?
On the other hand, it is a good idea. I mean, concept-wise, for the creation of a Dyson sphere. It's a good example of it, anyway.
Well, if we think about the actual creation, what we consider the birth of the planet, when it was just a molten mass. Obviously, if it's spinning, as it spins, as it makes its rotations here, and its rotation daily, and as its rotation around the sun, as it cools, theoretically, as it cools, it was supposed to be building the Earth, and more layers were built upon it. You could speculate that it actually threw those layers outwards, and by, I guess, gravitational forces, you could have had a center with a dome around it that could have formed. I guess they could think about it that way, because if you spin something, like if you spin clay on a potter's wheel, what happens to, part of it, it flies out. So, but what would hold it in place would have to be that pull, or that gravitational pull of that
rather
center,
than thinking
that
of
center
it
space.
In terms of clay on a potter's wheel. You ever separated liquids on a centrifuge?
Of course, yeah. That's how when you spin down blood.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's something like that, but we already know that the inside of the Earth is spinning much faster than the outside of the Earth. And we know this because we have a magnetic field which protects us from both solar and interstellar radiation, gamma rays from other solar systems and galaxies. So it kind of narrows things down that way.
Well, okay, so here's the big question for me is if the Earth is hollow and they say there's inhabitants, let us now speculate about the inhabitants themselves. So I've read a couple of different interesting stories. One being the Hollow Earth. It's interesting that they talk about. I'm getting a lot of noise on your end. Anyway, what are you doing? Playing with your? What are you playing with over there? What are
I
you playing
was
with?
changing the volume on my microphone.
What are you playing with? What are you playing over there?
I didn't think you could hear that.
Oh, I can hear it. So they talk a lot about the appearance of flying saucers after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they speculate that the reason why, and I don't know if this is the case, if there were more sightings of flying saucers at that time, and not just singular flying saucers. They were talking more about multiple ships in the same area at the same time, as if a fleet was being sent, or a small fleet, or a small group. And they speculate that it's because they were aware, obviously, that those bombs were dropped, and because they live in this inner world and they're aware of us, we're not aware of them. They came to the surface to find out what the heck was going on, because they would breathe the same atmospheres. They'd have the same, they'd breathe the same air as us. So that stimulated them to come to the surface, as they have in the past, but now is more frequent in more ships. It's interesting that in this book they talk about them being little brown men, and I've never heard of aliens being referred to as little brown men. Have you ever heard that?
No, well, I always heard like redskin. Aliens. It sounded like you said Indians.
No, they're saying that the aliens are little. There's multiple. The ones they were talking about here a couple times were little brown men, and that's the ones that were originally.
I've heard of aliens being referred to as pale white, even green, as in like Martians, But
I think that's one of the more commonly here is little
brown.
green men. Yeah, I've never heard little brown men. When I hear little brown men, I think of me. I think of myself as a little brown man. Anyway, what was that? That's a baby.
Oh my God, that's like in the next room. You can hear that.
I can hear your baby. Are you birthing a baby over there?
No, it's my grandson. He's must be playing in the hallway.
Oh, it sounds like Doc's birthing a baby. Okay, well, no. So little brown men, I kind of think of myself, but apparently that's what they're saying. Now, here's the interesting thing: they are saying in this book that the Eskimo, as they commonly refer to them in this book, and I guess I'll say Eskimo. What Inuit would be a specific tribe, I guess. I don't know if they collectively call themselves Inuit. So we'll just stick with Eskimo. If there's any Eskimo listeners or Inuits, I'm sorry if I insulted you in any way. That was not my intention. I am just quoting this book. But if there are listeners up in the far north, if there's a hollow earth, please let us know. I don't want to be finding out later on that I was a complete idiot and it really was hollow. I don't think I am, but hey, you never know.
I'm willing to risk it.
They say, because this is science, there's more science here, that the Eskimo people, the native Eskimo, they are not genetically the same as any other peoples that populate the earth. And therefore, the Eskimo must be directly descended from the little brown men from the interior of the earth.
I'd like to hear how they are genetically different.
Well, there are quite a bit of differences. We're talking about basically how we're talking about makeup. For example, if you look at like what you would consider an Eskimo diet, is very high in high in fats, obviously, but they tend to have very good cholesterol. For example, if you had the same diet here, maybe it would be worse. But there are differences, just like there's differences between how we can trace our lineage. Like if you did a 23andMe, and no, I'm not supporting 23andMe. I don't get any sponsorship money. I'm just using them as an example. You can see and track lineage that way because we all have just a little bit of differences. So they're saying that there is nowhere else on the planet that is known to man where peoples exactly like the Eskimos live. So where is the birthplace of the Eskimo? Well, it must be from the interior of the earth. They must be descended from the little brown men. And apparently, if you ask, according to this book, explorers of the Arctic would often ask the Eskimo where they were from, and they would say they were from the North. Their people came from the North. So I don't know why you would leave paradise and go head south and stay in the Arctic region where it's snowing and miserable, but they also speak of a land that is known as paradise, and they refer to it and they point to the north, beyond the great ice barrier reef. Again, not sure.
And how were these guys determining north? I'd like to know.
I think they point with their finger. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think they
Then
point.
they were probably mixed up
I don't think they point
as
up.
far as what was north.
I don't think they point
I'm
up in the
thinking
sky.
they meant south.
I don't think they point up in the sky. So that's what they. Now, what's interesting about these little brown men, they are much more intelligent than us. They have mastered all the sciences, mastered all the languages. They know all the languages. They are shorter than us, but they're very powerful, stronger than us. And basically, they've told us that they are masters of culture, masters of society, and they were sent to warn us about nuclear war. After we dropped the bombs, of course. Now, here it gets even more interesting. Why, other than breathing the air, and they don't say they're from the inner Earth, they say they're from outer space. They came to warn us, according to this book. But according to this book, they are saying that the reason why they understand about nuclear war is because these folks are descended from where, would you guess?
The center of the earth.
They come from the center of the earth, but they were not originally living in the center of the earth. They came from none other than the original nuclear war was started by Atlantis. That's actually what sunk Atlantis. The development and use of nuclear power, whether by accident or by rights of war, because apparently they were warring, and now they know better, and so they're all peace lovers.
So the city of Atlantis, was it a ship? Or was it someplace in the Hollow Earth?
No. It was an actual
Or-
city, and it sunk, but that doesn't mean that they stayed with it. It's not like they're a bunch of Aquaman living under the water. They all went to the center of the earth. Once upon a time, Atlantis was not just a city, but had spread throughout the entire world. You can see their influence throughout the entire world, according to this book, obviously. So in South America and China and Egypt was a colony of Atlantis, etc., etc. So where you see all these depictions of gods and super elite humans or whatever, they're all actually all part of that society. They're either Atlantean or Lemurian or parts of I guess the term is, I've not heard of it before until this book. You might have heard of it because you're more of a, I don't know. Seems you would know more about this stuff because you're a Dungeons and Dragons person, but maybe not. An antediluvian society? Does that sound familiar to you?
No, not very.
Well, anyway.
There are references to in just about every culture when it comes to their leaders having divine right to rule, and like king passes on his divine right to rule the kingdom to his son because of their birthright, certain lineage. So they're saying that maybe that the current ruler or current king is supposedly descendant from these aliens who they believed were gods at one point. And so the gods might have mingled with the humans and made little babies, and they grew up, and they said, "Oh, well, these are the new gods, the new king," because they're descendant of the gods.
Perhaps. I think that would be like if we're looking specifically from the face of the earth, per se. These guys specifically are saying that when these ships come, they're actually not from outer space. They're actually from the earth itself. But they're keeping that a secret because they don't want them to know that they came from inside the earth. It's far more realistic to believe that these spaceships and how quickly they came here after, as an example, after the bombs, It's far more realistic to believe that they came from inside the Earth than from outer space. Now, I will say that that might be the only thing that they said that made sense to me. Strictly from a travel perspective. We also have to understand, though, that if we are being visited by space folk from other planets, that they would have the capabilities of having better space travel than us, so it would take them less time to get here. However, the closest planets, I guess, from the time the bomb dropped till the time they were seeing sightings, yeah, they would have had to been hauling to get here. However, I don't know that any spaceships actually existed. Again, though, they're not thinking about any type of interdimensional travel, which that's a possibility.
I think interdimensional travel is more likely than traveling faster than the speed of light.
Well, I guess that is true. I think that, of course, anytime when you have to wonder about some things like the speed of light, we're trying to wrap our heads around it, which is seemingly impossible to achieve. But that doesn't mean other beings couldn't have achieved it, etc.
Well, that's not to suggest that the limitations on the speed of light are not, like, maybe they found a way around that.
Right. There's a hop, whatever. I think it'd be more interesting to see, not could you actually travel at the speed of light, but how do you stop yourself without being a big splat? But, of course, they would have to figure that out also.
Well, you remember the show we used to watch, Futurama?
Yeah.
Okay, well, in that show, they traveled from solar system to solar system, not by traveling faster than the speed of light. The ship didn't move through the universe as fast as the ship moving the universe around the ship. Yeah. Basically compressing space in front of it,
right,
and expanding space behind it. And it did that so quickly that it could exceed the speed of light by comparison, when in reality the ship never moved.
Right. Yeah, which is kind of a cool concept. All right, so that's one. So the little brown men, apparently, if I understand the book correctly, are really not. They don't make up all of the inhabitants of the inner Earth. It seems like they are actually. It kind of makes it sound like they're manufactured to be the ones who ride around in the spaceships and kind of patrol things. So there's actually other inhabitants. Now,
like dwarves and elves and hobgoblins and who knows what else.
Right.
Giants.
Well, there's also all of our prehistoric animals are still there. Like the woolly mammoth, et cetera, et cetera. And no. So the other one is, I read another book. This one is called actually a really good book. The interesting thing about this book is it is presented as though it is. It kind of, if you read the Amazon descriptions, it kind of makes it out like it's a children's book. But if you actually read the book and you read the description of the book and you read the description of the book in the Hollow Earth, it's not a children's book. It's a story told to the author by this old man.
From a child's perspective.
It's a story told to this man by this old man that he befriended in California. And on his deathbed, basically, he told him this story and gave him this information about it. And this guy wrote this book. And he presented it not as fiction, but as nonfiction. So when you read the reviews of the book, it's like people are like, oh, my children read this. That was such a cute story. But really, it's supposed to be a story about this guy's travels with his father, who went through the polar opening in 1829 and spent 2 years inside the Hollow Earth. So essentially, what happened was him and his dad, they're living kind of up near the Norway area. They're on a fishing boat, and his dad tells him the stories because everybody's got stories of the Promised Land or Valhalla or Eden or whatever. And so his father had described it to him as being far beyond the poles.
Do you think it's possible that that's how the wizard got to the land of Oz in a hot air balloon?
Well, that's Kansas, man. That's way south of the North Pole. But
Hey, I mean, we're not talking about things that have to make sense.
well, I guess, yeah. So anyway, him and his dad travel far north, and of course they're able to make it through all the barriers, the ice, etc., etc. And all of a sudden it's warm now, and they're tooling down a river, and they can see sunlight, but it doesn't look like their sunlight anymore. It doesn't look like that, that nice warm yellow glow that we get when the sun does eventually come out around here. It's more of a reddish color with some white around it, some white cloudiness around it. And it's no longer the sun that we're accustomed to in our solar system, but it's a little sun in the middle of the hollow earth, to which the inhabitants refer to it as the smoky god.
Hey, do you think that one of the inhabitants are called Sleestack?
No, we'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
Okay.
We'll get to that in just a minute here. So anyway, no, these inhabitants, so they're tooling along, right? They've got their little boat, zooming along. They hear voices. They see a ship. The ship's gigantic. So this dude's dad was a typical, like, northerner, Norwegian type, like 6'3", big dude. And he was very small in comparison to the inhabitants of the hollow earth, who were on average of about 12 feet tall. Anywhere from 12 to 14 feet tall. So tall and so, in fact, that they were able to kind of pick their boat up and put it on their boat.
That is about the same description that they gave of the Nephilim.
Did you say heffalumps?
Nephilim.
How about a woozle?
The half angel, half human crossbreed.
Well, interestingly enough, these folks didn't speak English, which that's always a shocker to me. Why didn't they speak English? If they're an advanced race, they probably should speak the same language. They should be well versed in every language. So here's the thing: is they were surprised to see these dudes, these little fellers, and they brought them around, showed them about, took them in. Baked them a cake, I don't know, whatever. And they lived with them for like 2 years. So, do they not wonder where they would have come from? Would they not have, if they had apparently they had advanced transportation, had some sort of like...
If they were that advanced, you would think they'd already know.
Exactly, you would think that they would know of our existence.
Right, and they just chose not to get involved.
So here's what I would say. If I was an advanced race, or I was an advanced civilization, and I was tooling along and I seen these things, and I know of their existence, and I know where they are, and I know what kind of people they are, why would I risk taking them in? Unless I was never going to let them leave. Because why would I want if I was an inner Earth inhabitant, why would I want the outer Earth folks to know of my existence?
You may not want them to know. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're okay with taking the appropriate measures to ensure that they can't tell anyone. It's like, I don't want you to tell anybody about us, but, I'm not going to kill you. That wouldn't be right. And I don't feel right locking you up. So... I just have to ask you not to do it and trust that you'll respect my wishes. They could be that kind of thing, those kind of people.
Right. Well, if they are in advanced society, I guess they probably wouldn't just kill you unless, as a collective for the greater good, they thought it was a good idea. But apparently, they decided it wasn't a bad idea. It was a bad idea. They didn't feel threatened at all. They got taken in for a couple of years, got to tour, got to check some stuff out. And he writes of very advanced society and advanced transportation that they had back then. He spoke of basically of a rail type system that they had that was at no risk of crashing because of how it was designed. And this was all, like I said, this was all released back. The story would have been, what did I say? I don't know. I think in the 1800s would have got released, and the story itself would have got released around 1908 or so. So, again, very interesting claim that on the inside, little son, that they call the Smoky God. Interesting enough, all these stories you hear, they talk about the society of people who all have a common goal or a common ideal, and they're all equal, but yet they're all under control of one person or one thing. In this instance, I guess you could say the Smoky God's in charge. What they believe actually lives inside the smoky ball of the sun, or the god of the world, or the king of the world, etc. So now we've got giants, and we've got little brown men living inside the earth. Now, you made reference to some Sleestackage. No one makes any references to Sleestacks in this particular book.
Do they make any kind of reference to anything that might resemble them? For those who don't know, Sleestack are one of the creatures found on an old TV show from back in the early 70s called Land of the Lost. I believe it was, what was the name of the actor who made a remake of it recently? Comedian.
Will Ferrell. I think it was like 2000.
Will Ferrell, that's right.
Something like that. Yeah, so the Sleestack, like I said, we might have to dive into the Land of the Lost a little bit one of these days, not too much. It's actually a very interesting show, a very interesting concept. I watched a couple episodes the other day when we had talked, because you had brought it up. And the first part of it, you actually wonder if that's why, if they were Hollow Earth, if they were following kind of a Hollow Earth theme when they designed the show. Because in the very beginning, they're tooling down the river, and if you want to watch it, it's on YouTube. It's actually pretty funny. You can watch the difference between animation then and animation now, because the river is literally like, some rocks, and they've got water going down the rocks, like a little, like inside, as if you would make it out in your backyard and just put a bunch of rocks and make a little stream and pour some water down it, is what it looks like.
And then they described a waterfall that plunged them down 1,000 feet below.
1,000 feet below, but in the very first episode, the father says that he saw 3 moons the first night they were there. And so he deduced that they were not actually on Earth, but when they plunged down the waterfall, they must have went through some sort of a portal to another dimension, another world, etc.
That's a lot more believable than the Hollow Earth.
Why don't you believe in the Hollow Earth? It's starting to hurt my feelings.
I am just a non-believer that way, I guess.
I think it's pretty. If you look back at, if you take a quick trip to Wikipedia and actually look up Land of the Lost, there's some pretty badass themes in that show, for being a kids show. They tackle some pretty cool shit. They've got these prehistoric, or I guess it's not prehistoric because it's within their history, but they've got this humanoid type thing that's there that's like kind of primate like. It's called a
Chaka.
Yeah, Chaka. He's a Paku or Pakuni, and he speaks a language. Well, what's interesting is they actually hired a person who was a linguist to develop the scripting for the Pakuni. So they designed it that way so that it wasn't just gibberish that they were speaking. They were actually building a language so these kids that watched the show could actually kind of learn the language over time, which I think is brilliant, which I never heard before, and I'm assuming it's correct.
Well, they did the same kind of
Wikipedia.
thing. How do you think they came up with the Klingon language for Star Trek, stuff like that?
Right. Yeah, I just thought it was really pretty cool that they actually put that much thought into a kid's show. And there's some pretty good themes in there. You have to dive into it. Like I said, it is available on YouTube. I did watch a couple episodes, which I got some nostalgia from it. Actually, when I watched it, I was surprised at what year it came out. I think it came out in 1974, so I would have been 1. So I watched it for years and years and years, and it had been off the air when I was watching it. So it had already been off the air for several years when I was watching it. Kind of like Gilligan's Island and Laverne and Shirley and all that
Weren't
other
there
shit.
2 seasons of it?
It was 3 seasons. 3 seasons.
Okay.
The third season, the main character, the father, was not in it anymore. He had...
Yeah, I think the actor died.
No, he's alive still. He actually left the show because he was asking for more money for the cast members because they were using their likenesses on like lunchboxes and toys and all this other stuff, and none of them got any money for any of that.
So in the show, they explained it by saying that he found a way home, but
Right.
then someone else took his place.
Yeah, his brother took his place. His brother had been searching down the river for them, following the same route for like 6 months until he finally also came through the portal or whatever.
That's some really bad luck.
Yeah.
I hate to be in their family.
Like, fuck, where's everybody else at? Yeah, that's kind of why I want to watch the rest of the episode, some of the episodes, because there's other people there from like the Civil War and all kinds of shit that I don't even remember about. So there's some pretty cool themes because they've got some slee stacks there that are either from the future or from the past that are advanced that can actually speak, that actually speaks to them and can tell them about, you know, the different, how they're better than us basically. But they've got an old temple there and they've got obelisks and all kinds of cool science shit. But the slee stacks that are there now don't really know how to use it. So somehow...
Well, what was his name? Enoch? The one slee stack? He was kind of the smart one.
Yeah,
he knew how to use
he
everything.
was actually from the past. So the ruins that they see are actually probably from his people. So the slee stacks that you see in the show that are not like him, not that guy, are
They were
actually
devolved.
They devolved. It's a society. It's a species that actually devolved. So it's actually pretty cool. So yeah, there's some really cool themes in there. I'd like to kind of dive into it just a little bit more. I'm gonna have to watch a few of those episodes. I thought I would be watching it and be like, oh, this sucks ass, but it was actually pretty entertaining. I guess as an older person, when I watch it now, I'm trying to find the themes. You know, trying to see what little hidden messages they were putting in there. Not hidden messages in a nefarious sense. Hidden messages in a good sense. I think the very first episode.
Almost all shows have a moral to the story, especially like right around the 80s. You know, like you couldn't even watch like G.I. Joe without having a moral to the story, and they'd come right out with it, saying, knowledge is power.
There was the 2 minutes at the end. Didn't the Transformers do that too? Was it the Transformers that did that also?
Yeah, they did, towards the end.
Fuck, you're like, fuck's sake. God damn it, stop doing that shit. You're ruining my show.
What?
Trying to eat my Ruffles potato chips and French onion dip, and you're fucking it up. Anyway.
What?
Trying to enjoy my Ruffles potato chips and French onion dip, and they're fucking it up with some moral. All I really want to see is the cleavage on Lady J. Now shut the fuck up and punch somebody in the sack. That was my G.I. Joe.
For a moment, I got confused because I'm eating M&Ms, and I was like, what? You can't hear that.
You can't hear me eat my M&Ms. What the fuck's wrong with you? So anyway, so apparently, any time that we've been graced with the presence of some superior being throughout time, apparently they've been from the Hollow Earth. Apparently, my people who believe in, or did believe in Quetzalcoatl, apparently he was a Hollow Earther. You guessed it. He was fair.
Did you say Quetzalcoatl?
Quetzalcoatl. Yeah,
The feathered serpent.
Well, he was a guy. The feathered serpent was the term for him. That's a title. He was a dude. He was fair-skinned. Came flying in on a saucer like a shield. He's the one who taught.
Maybe he was a slee stack.
He's the one who taught them to cultivate corn and wanted them to be vegetarians and believe in peace. And hence, that's the reason why they got their asses handed to them when the fucking Spaniards, was it the Spaniards or the freaking, what you call it? Oh, god damn it. What the fuck's right next to Spain? Starts with a P. What the, god dang.
Portugal?
Jeez, oh Pete's is my freaking geography sucking today.
Portuguese.
The Portuguese invaded, and of course they're like, oh, he's back. It's a white dude. Wrong. Next thing you know, you're getting fucked over. You got to give all your gold. And you're getting fucked up the ass by a bunch of Portuguese or Spaniards or whoever the fuck it was. It was Portuguese, wasn't it?
I think it might have been Portuguese ships that carried them, but I think they were a Spanish army that they actually met with.
Well, whatever. It was those dipsticks. It was Pizarro, right? I don't know. Anyway, fucked my people over as usual because they thought that Quetzalcoatl had come back, but he hadn't, or if he ever came in the first place. What's interesting is that, like I said, that all these different places are actually colonies, if you will, of Atlantis or Lemuria. So they had a presence on the surface, but now they're all down below, if you will, kind of like your lunch from yesterday.
You do realize that Quetzalcoatl is one of the creatures or one of the beings known to be like one of the first vampires, or thought of in that way.
No. That is not. That is not an old belief. Quetzalcoatl is a peace-loving entity, and the feathered serpent is not what he actually was. That's what they called him. He was not. He's depicted in some. If you look at like Guatemala and stuff like that, when they talk about the feathered serpent, which is Cucamat, it's just like anything else about the relative, the similarities between religions or mythologies.
Okay,
like,
I may be getting the two of them mixed up.
Like when you're talking about, how in the Romans have, Mars, and the Greeks have whoever, or whatever, how they're very similar to each other.
The Romans call him Mars and the Greeks call him Ares.
Yeah, or whatever, you know what I mean? But they're all basically the same. They've just really nailed it down to almost the exact same thing. Well, the Mayans, the Guatemalans, the Mexicans, the Aztecs all have very similar entities.
Jupiter and Zeus, another good example.
Right, exactly.
Same guy.
So when you're talking about Quetzalcoatl, if I could be pronouncing that wrong anyway, that was an actual dude. So if you actually look at the depictions of him, Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent. That was the title. That's what they called him. But he was a guy. And so when you look at the pictures of him, or in the artists, in their renderings of their paintings, here he is surrounded by all of my brown folk, and he's white, a white bearded person, fair skinned. So that's why they fell prey, if you will, to the invaders when they came, because they thought he came back, and they gave him everything. But
and what'd you say the other one's name was?
Cucamat? Cucamat would be like Guatemalan. Spelled Q-U. Something. But also a feathered serpent. And that's the feathered serpent of creation. There's 3 gods of creation if you go to Central South America type creation gods. And again, there we are I think they made us of clay also. But anyway, so back to what I was saying about the Hollow Earth thing. So giants. We got giants. We got little brown men. We got spaceships. Flying saucers. All the time. Everywhere. Although actually in the Smoky God, he doesn't mention flying saucers. Or flying ships. Which is interesting. So I would say that, in my opinion, the one thing that they did say that made sense was space travel, timed space travel. It makes more sense if stuff came from the hollow Earth or inside the Earth. But why not just think that maybe it's not a completely hollow Earth, but that there's caverns up there or openings up there. You could hide a civilization in the Earth. You could hide. I mean, how big of an airbase could you make? You could easily have an airbase at the upper, at the North Pole and at the South Pole. You have air bases that, and then all you have to do for us, because they're not talking about satellite imagery, but here you could easily manipulate satellite imagery so you can't see it. And all you would have to do.
I suppose, but it's a 300-mile wide. It's almost as big as Michigan. That's huge.
Yeah. So, but you could easily put an air base up there because it doesn't. How big would an air base be? It's not going to be super huge, but you could easily have a staging area from there. That's not a problem, and people don't have to know about it. That's kind of what the point is. The point is to have these secrets. That's national security. Why can't we have, it's what is it? Unclaimed land anyway, right? Isn't the North and South Pole really belong to the, I don't know, the whole world? Doesn't Nobody really claims it, right?
No, there were treaties signed that agreed that no one nation would settle there, and that certain types of experiments would not be conducted there because of their magnetic interference that it would provide to the rest of the world. And so both the North and South Poles are kind of off limits for any form of military and limited experimentation to avoid contamination until they can conduct experiments without contaminating, thus ruining it for everyone else.
Yeah, because it is a winter wonderland. We all want to be up there and have a ski resort. Yeah, I can't wait to go up
Right.
there. I can't wait to go up there anytime soon. Yeah, especially with all the horror movies where you've got some ancient animal living that gets thawed out in the ice, or something that can spawn herself and kind of crawl up your ass and then burst out through your jugular. Yeah, I can't wait for that. Anyway,
The name was Kukulkan, Kukulkan,
okay.
who was also a feathered serpent, but they referred to him as the mighty Mayan snake god.
Okay.
That's the
That's
vampire
who
one
you're
that I
thinking
was
of.
thinking of.
Yeah,
I
that's
was
who you're thinking of.
getting them confused.
Yeah, well, because they like their feathered they like the feathered serpent. And
Probably
again,
related in some way, I'm sure.
oh yeah, again, and you'll see that throughout. Again, when we talk about how does one nation come up with an idea just like the other nation, well, just like Asian countries have a feathered serpent also. So where did they come up with that idea? Well, then why did the nations of Central and South America also have the feathered serpent? But in Europe, it's not really a feathered serpent. It's kind of different. So yeah, I guess there was a lot of trade agreements and travel between China and South America and Central America. But of course, they could easily make that hop if they went in through the North Pole and came out the South Pole and did their trading that way.
That's still one hell of a journey.
Well, if they've got the technology to make it relatively quickly. And they've got 4 main rivers there that flow very rapidly. And so, you could make the trip there probably in a day. If you want to take a leisure trip, maybe take it a day.
On either side, the compass would still point in the same direction.
Well, they're going to have special compasses, though, don't you think? I mean, they're not going to use our compass.
Just label them different, maybe.
These got different labels. Exactly. Shit, I missed my point on there. What was I going to say about that?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, again, though, it's talking about when we talk about how is there so many cultural similarities when there's such a great distance in between these two locations, and you can see this cultural similarities hundreds and maybe even thousands of years ago. So feathered serpent's a good example. But that's like saying people don't have an imagination. You can't think of something that cool or that similar, or where the color scheme comes from.
Look at the pyramids. I mean, for God's sake.
Yeah. So
they had pyramids in South America. They had pyramids in Africa, and even parts of China.
And they say Russia.
Pyramids.
They say possibly Russia. But hey, okay. But they say that's a mountain, so whatever. Or is that? It's somewhere in that area. So anyway, but I was going to talk about spaceships and kind of shooting out the orifice of you, if you will. Like I said, you could have. Here's my problem. Okay, you know how I love conspiracies.
Right.
Here's my problem with this. Why is it that I think it's easier to have a conspiracy theory about the hollow earth in order to detract from stuff that's more important, because we could have a joint base, for example, in the North Pole or in the South Pole among multiple nations and want to keep that something secret. You know what I mean? And let them have their little hollow earth theories, because it's going to detract from the actual important things. That it's kind of like saying, mommy and daddy are talking right now. Here, go play with this. Because that's kind of what I feel like. I feel like people are so much more interested in looking at things and taking it seriously. Like, I love conspiracy theories, but not because I really take them super seriously. When I talk about conspiracy theories, the ones that I'm talking about make perfect sense. In other words, I don't think it's called a conspiracy theory, but I don't think it really is when we say that there's certain families throughout the world that really kind of run things.
Kind of like the magic bullet theory. That's a conspiracy theory.
Right. Yeah. And when I'm talking about conspiracy theories, when I talk about ones, I talk about ones that are not that far off the map. When I say, well, there probably are lots of very rich families that are influential that hold the power in many nations. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's an accurate, realistic statement. But people make it people make it out to be like, oh, that's like a crackpot thing that you're focusing on. No, a crackpot thing to focus on is a hollow earth theory or a flat earth theory. You have so much time in your day-to-day life that you want to sit around and think that the earth is flat and not wonder about what's going on in your own nation and in your own backyard?
Because the tens of thousands of scientists across the world, both, for the past several hundred years, are all wrong.
Right, and you know so much more. You at home, living in your mom's basement, or flipping. Not to say anything is wrong with flipping burgers. If you're 18, but not if you're 40 years old and you're working at a freaking a chain restaurant making minimum wage and wondering why you're not making more minimum wage and wanting more than minimum wage, but you're wrapped around a conspiracy theory, but you can't tell me who the governor is. So it is more like, to me, it's more like someone somewhere sits around saying, okay, well, all these sheep, they're so much more interested in all these other things that they're convinced is going on. We can make whatever decisions we really need to make without their input because they're so distracted by this other shit. When I look at the goofy or crackpot or crazy ideas out there, I enjoy them. I think they're fun. But I'm not going to detract from the real messages out there and the real stuff that's going on day to day. And I think that's why we're so... it's kind of almost sickening that like I said, I think that this nation probably is more into stuff that is fictitious than what is happening all around them. That's my soapbox. My soapbox.
That's because fiction sucks a lot less than reality.
But when you're making the fiction, trying to make that fiction your reality, I mean, where does it end in that?
Then they call that delusion.
Right, and that seems like the more and more folks we run into are delusional, and it makes you wonder where we're going as a nation and how do we look to other nations. If you look at our nation just as a person in general and say, and I'm all about it too, and I say the same thing, that America, this is the greatest nation on the planet. Okay, it is, but we're still full of a bunch of fucking retards. And I don't mean retard in the sense of someone who's mentally handicapped. I mean retard in the insulting way that we used to use it when we called each other retards back in the 80s. That's how I mean it. There's nothing wrong with a little fun, but if you're basing your life on a book that was released in 1969, that was based off of other books that were released years and years before that, based on no scientific evidence whatsoever, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, I gotta wonder how much money the guy made off of writing that book.
Probably $4. Probably nothing. He probably wrote it.
But,
he probably wrote it as
$4
a sense.
was a lot of money.
He probably wrote it out of a sense of he wrote it out of a sense of justice because he felt that this is something that needed to be known, man. He needed to be heard because the earth is hollow, for God's sake, and in the middle of it are a bunch of beings living who could share all this scientific evidence with us and teach us not to be interested in war. We're wasting our brain power on war. We're wasting our brain power on sex, and we're eating meat instead of eating fruit and all this other bullshit. Well, you know what? Those are all great ideas, but you're still a fucking moron. Still a fucking moron.
I think I just found the Hollow Earth book online in a PDF format. You could download it.
Ah, son of a bitch. I think I paid like $3 for this.
Could have had it free.
God dang, that sucks. Interestingly enough, though, any listeners, if you want to buy this, if you want to buy this book off me now that I'm done with it, it is fucking old. And as I read it, you know, as you read it, the binding comes apart, and it ends so abruptly. I'm not kidding you. It ends on page 254, and it ends very abruptly, so that I thought that it was missing pages. So I had to go online and see what the page count was.
Then they ended it. They ended the newer version by having Forrest Gump just say, "That's all I have to say about that."
No, it ends by saying it also may mean that higher species who long ago discovered the same technique have voyaged back and forth between the stars quite regularly. This would in turn increase the likelihood that our solar system is visited by races from other stars. That's how it ends. That's it. I will say,
interestingly enough, some celebrities, when you start talking about, you know, people who would base their life on these kinds of beliefs, take a look at some of the celebrities. One of them I actually recognized. His name is John Barrowman. He was part of the Torchwood show. There was a spinoff from Doctor Who.
I've only ever seen one episode of Doctor Who.
Oh, Doctor Who was a good show in its day.
That'd be like one of the longest running shows on TV.
Very well, maybe.
So you're saying this guy believes in the hollow earth or the flat earth?
Hollow Earth.
God, really? See, what I didn't do, and I just started researching this just because, well, when I say research, I mean reading about it, people. I don't mean I read papers. I don't mean I wrote papers. I mean I read stuff. When I embarked upon my journey of academic discovery, I did not ever look to see if there were actually large followers of the hollow earth. If there were lots of them out there, but it does not surprise me that there are. It doesn't surprise me at all. So, I will say, however, that I do not believe in the hollow earth. I will also say this, though.
I believe in making fun of those who do believe in the hollow earth.
I believe that there is a possibility of many things. I do not, however, believe that our earth is like a donut. No, I do not believe that. Sorry. I'm sorry. I just don't. Is there a possibility that there are large areas of land at the North and South Pole that can be easily masked by satellite imagery for reasons of secrecy by the government and the interests of world security? Sure, why not?
I don't feel like it is much of a stretch to say that, the Admiral Byrd and the guy who wrote the book, they based it off of their perception of something that happened to them. That I can buy. Okay, if we go with, their story, they met these creatures and the sun was different, and all these changes. I can accept their word for it on that, but their explanation trying to justify it through this quasi science, it just doesn't work. So parallel dimension, maybe, went through a portal, maybe, but hollow earth, no, not totally busted in my opinion.
Well, what's interesting, I think, is that the listeners could listen to what you just said and think that your idea that a portal is more believable than the hollow earth is just a crackpot notion.
and it is, because
I
have nothing to base it on.
It is.
Except pure conjecture.
It is. Yeah, exactly. But I think that what's kind of cool, and this is not made up whatsoever, we know that throughout the planet Earth, there are areas that have higher intensity energy or currents or what have you that can be harnessed mechanically in a mechanical sense. For example, Tesla knew that, was able to do that sort of thing. These types of energies can be felt near the Great Pyramids, near Stonehenge, different things like that. So would it be too impossible to believe that, especially we know that everything goes screwy at the true poles, which makes sense, obviously, because of the polarity. So is there a possibility that there is some sort of dimensional travel that you could feasibly go through at that point? Maybe. Who knows? The world is a mysterious place. I would not totally rule out openings at the North and South Pole. However, I would think from a spatial perspective and from the forces of nature that it's not possible for Earth to be hollow.
That's a good statement. Good way to put it.
Now, if you asked me to repeat that, I couldn't, and that's why it's recorded.
Well, that's why we do the show.
And that's why it's recorded. So I think that this will basically wrap up our Hollow Earth two-parter. I'd like to thank everybody for making this journey with us. Please go out there and check out. Don't buy this book. You can if you want to.
No, dude, you can get it online for free.
Hey, get online for free. And actually, before we wrap up, I did want to ask the doc if you said you had watched The Hole at the North Pole.
Yeah, I took a few minutes and looked it over.
And what did you think of? Did you give it more than 1 star?
I don't rate stuff that I see on YouTube.
Well, what did you think of the hole in the pole? What he was referring to as the hole?
There's a lot of explanations that they really don't cover. Yeah, what is it? Well, it could be a shadow. It could be somebody's got a military base there and they're trying to hide it from the other countries. It could be that, which I think is very likely, it could be a crash site for some alien tech that they found. It could be that they found some archaeological site that they want to keep people out of. Or I could go on and guess all day, but what it is not is a hole in the earth that leads to something else. There's just no evidence of that.
No, I think is not only is he's not really saying it's a hollow earth. That guy is saying it's a black hole. You know, it's a black hole in the North Pole.
I've seen shadows that look like black holes in that way in other photographs. More than likely, it's just a shadow or something that was blotted out.
Yeah, I think it's just blotted out.
It wouldn't be seen.
I think it's just blotted out on purpose. It's pretty. That's my impression. I'm like, okay, dude, it's blotted out for a reason.
But I think what they're trying to do by coming out with these outlandish theories to explain them is to draw attention to it, to make it harder for whoever to keep whatever secret is being kept in that place. So eventually, the truth is going to come out of what it really is, even though maybe they know that their story or their theory is convoluted piece of crap.
Right. All right, well, I just wanted to get your take on that. And like I said, this wraps up our Hollow Earth episode. And we did this remotely, so hopefully it will sound good. It seems like it sounded okay. I'll do a last edit and check it out, and then we'll get this released to everybody. So as usual, though, go ahead and give us a listen. And for future episodes, they will be done remote because I'm about to do a jaunt to the great state of Arizona for the next 3 months, and I'll be leaving next week. We'll try to get out one more episode. If we can't, then it might be 2 weeks before you get the next one. But I'll try to do some bonus material. You might get another Beaveman and the daughter before I leave. But I just want to thank all of our listeners. Make sure you check us out on SoundCloud and the Apple Podcast app and anywhere else that you might happen to listen to podcasts. Not only that, please comment, email us, etc., etc. Share us, like us. That's how we keep going. We don't make any money for doing this. I would like to do this for the rest of my life. So please make it easy for me to do so. I like to see those stats jump up. We have not reached 900 plays. We are like 10 away from 900 plays on SoundCloud.
Yes. Make the Beaveman happy.
Yeah.
Make the numbers go up.
Yeah, make the Beaveman happy. You don't know how much stress I get when these microphones don't work right. All right, so from the Beaveman, adios, mooch fuckos.
And I'm the Doc, and I would like to add, ta-da, we did it. Finished another show. And so, crickets, bitches.